Well, oppressive temperatures are making headlines in cities across the globe, which is why Singapore is rethinking its sweltering urban areas to dampen the effects of climate change. Can it be a model for the rest of the world? Well, the New York Times is exploring the subject of cooling down urban areas in this latest article by Josh Holder, who joins us this afternoon. Josh, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Okay, fascinating article. Let's start off with this. As you say in the article, preventing climate change, of course, is out of Singapore's control. But what do researchers say is really a surefire way to limit city temperatures?
So we spoke to some of the leading heat researchers on this, and they all actually came to one consensus that the best way to cool down a city is to simply plant more trees. So trees have a real dual benefit. They create a lot of shade, which stops the sun's rays from reaching the city in the first place. And they also cool the air through this natural process. So they take the heat energy and then they convert water into water vapor. So it has this natural cooling effect.
And buildings absorb and radiate heat, as we know. How is Singapore trying to cool buildings down?
So there's some really simple ways that we can do it. So Singapore is putting things in place that give subsidies for developers to install things like roof gardens on the top of buildings. So those trees help to shade the building. And then in the same way that in cooler climates, you want to prevent breezes around buildings. In Singapore, they're actively making buildings channel cool air through the building. Now that reduces the amount of air conditioning you use, which is better for the planet, but it also saves costs. And then they're also doing things like installing something called district cooling. So instead of every building having its own air conditioning, you can have one big plant in the district, and that can cool dozens of buildings.
And let's talk about the residential areas. Marina Bay, can you walk me through that and what Singapore is doing to really focus attention on new neighborhoods like Marina Bay?
Of course, so Singapore's in a pretty unique position. It's got this centralized government. So it's actually developing whole districts almost at once. So something like Marina Bay was planned from the start to reduce heat. So you've got a lot of tall buildings in Marina Bay, but they were carefully planned. You've got this mix of tall buildings and shorter buildings. So when the cool air comes in from the sea, it actually funnels that air down to the pedestrian level, and it creates this nice cooling effect for the pedestrians that are around there. Another thing that cities can do is make sure they've got big green spaces. So there's a huge park in Marina Bay, and that creates a really big cooling effect. When you put trees together, it can amplify it, and you can get up to a few degrees cooler in the park than in the neighboring building areas.
Okay, which really leads into the next question about the green corridors, because you've seen that those have been successful really in other cities around the world too.
Yeah, so green corridors are this idea of connecting up your green spaces so that you can get the cool air that they generate to circulate around the city. So this has been successful in many places. And within the corridor itself, we've seen temperatures can drop by something like 4.5 degrees. So this is a really large effect, and you would definitely notice it walking around the city.
And then lastly, how do these strategies and inventions really to cool down cities, how do those help in other ways? Urban planners and policymakers say that that can help in many different ways.
So yeah, if we're talking about adding more trees and greenery to the city, that can have really positive effects. You know, green spaces give citizens places for recreation. They can work out, enjoy time with their families. They also encourage things like more walking and cycling. So people aren't driving as much. They aren't on public transport. And it's also been shown to have a really positive effect on people's mental health. So these other benefits are just side effects. Heat is the main target for Singapore, but it's a great opportunity to also have positive impacts on the city in different ways.
Okay, Josh Holder from the New York Times, fascinating article. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.